The hospice nurse pulled me into the hallway and pressed a folded piece of paper into my hand. She looked over her shoulder first. That's what I remember most. Not what she said. The way she looked over her shoulder. My wife had been dead for 11 minutes. The paper had an address on it. Nothing else. A street number and a storage facility name on the east side of town, written in handwriting I didn't recognize. And below the address, 4 words, "Do not go home." I stood there and I thrust the whole way with the paper shaking in my hand, and I thought, this is grief. This is what grief does to you. You imagine things. You read meaning into nothing. But the nurse was already walking back toward the nurse's station, and she didn't turn around once. My wife's name was Eleanor. We had been married for 31 years. She was 64 years old when she died, which feels like a sentence I should be able to say by now, without my throat closing up. 64. We had plans. We had a trip booked to Portugal in the spring. She had a book on the nightstand she hadn't finished. Small things like that are what nobody warns you about. She had been sick for 8 months. Pancreatic cancer, which is the kind that doesn't give you much time to negotiate. We did the treatments. We did everything the doctors said. We moved her to hospice in September, when it became clear that fighting it was just another way of making her last weeks harder than they needed to be. She died on a Tuesday morning in November. I was holding her hand. Our daughter was in the waiting room. Our son-in-law had gone to get coffee. It was just the 2 of us when she went, which I think she would have wanted. Eleanor was a private person. She didn't like a fuss. I walked out into the hallway to tell our daughter, and that's when the nurse stopped me. Her name tag said Anita. I had seen her every day for 3 weeks, and I don't think we'd exchanged more than a dozen words. She was maybe 40, quiet, efficient, the kind of person you trust without knowing why. She put the paper in my hand, and she said very quietly, "She asked me to give you this when it was over. She made me promise." Then she said, "Please don't go home tonight." I looked down at the paper. I looked back up. She had already started walking away. "Wait," I said. "What is this? What does this mean?" She didn't stop. "I don't know what's in the unit," she said, still walking. "She didn't tell me that part. She just said you'd understand when you got there." I didn't understand. I didn't understand anything. Our daughter came out of the waiting room and I put the paper in my jacket pocket before she could see it. I don't know why I did that. Some instinct. She was already crying and I held her for a long time in that hallway and I didn't say a word about the nurse or the address or the instruction not to go home. My son-in-law came back with the coffee. He's a decent man. I want to say that clearly. He's been good to our daughter and good to us, and he handled all the hospice logistics these last weeks with a kind of quiet competence that I was grateful for. He put his hand on my shoulder in the hallway and he said, "I'm so sorry, Dad," and I nodded and said something I don't remember. "We made the calls that you make. The funeral home. Eleanor's sister in Phoenix. Our grandson, who was 12 and didn't fully understand and kept asking if Grandma had been in pain at the end. I told him no. I don't know if that was true. I think it was close enough. By 4 in the afternoon, our daughter was asking if I wanted to come stay with them. She didn't think I should be alone in the house. I told her I was fine. I told her I needed a night to myself, that I'd come over for dinner tomorrow, that I just wanted to sleep in my own bed. She didn't like it, but she didn't push. Eleanor used to say, "Our daughter got her stubbornness from me," which was funny because Eleanor was the most stubborn woman I had ever met in my life. I miss her every minute. I waited until their car pulled out of the hospice parking lot. Then I took the paper out of my pocket. The storage facility was called Harbor Creek Self-Storage. I knew the name. It was out on Route 9, maybe 20 minutes from our house. I'd driven past it 100 times over the years and never thought about it once. I sat in the parking lot for a few minutes before I went in. It was getting dark. The temperature had dropped and there was a smell of wood smoke from somewhere. And I thought about Eleanor and our fireplace and all the winter evenings we'd spent reading in front of it. 31 years of winter evenings. Then I got out of the car. The access code was on the paper, I realized when I looked more closely. The address, the 4 words, and then a 5-digit number in the bottom corner that I'd initially taken for a zip code. I punched it into the gate keypad and it opened. Unit 31 was near the back of the facility, on the left side. The lock was a combination padlock, and I didn't have the combination. I stood there staring at it for a moment, and then without knowing exactly why, I tried Eleanor's birthday, month and day and year, all 6 digits. The lock opened. I want to pause here because I don't think I have words for what that felt like. She had thought of everything. She had known I would try her birthday. She had set the combination herself at some point on some ordinary day when she was making plans I knew nothing about. And she had chosen her own birthday so that I wouldn't forget, so that even in the worst moment of my life I would be able to get through the door. That's who Eleanor was. That's who she had always been. I lifted the door. The unit was about the size of a large walk-in closet. There were plastic storage bins along one wall, neatly labeled in Eleanor's handwriting. There was a folding chair in the center of the space, and on the chair, a manila envelope with my name on it. Just my name. Philip, written in the way she always wrote it, the double L, the slight upturn on the P. I'd watched her write that name 10,000 times. Birthday cards, grocery lists, notes tucked into my coat pocket before I left for work. I sat down in the folding chair and I opened the envelope. There were several things inside. A letter, handwritten, 4 pages. A smaller sealed envelope with our daughter's name on it. A USB drive. And a photograph I had never seen before. Eleanor, young, maybe 23 or 24, standing in front of a building I didn't recognize, laughing at something off camera. She looked so happy it made my chest ache. I read the letter. I'm going to tell you what was in it, but I need you to understand that I read it 3 times before I believed it. 3 times in a cold storage unit, sitting on a folding chair on the night my wife died. And even then I wasn't sure I was reading it right. Eleanor had a son. Before me. Before us. Before any of it. She was 19 years old, and she was in her first year at Ohio State, and she made a mistake. That's how she described it in the letter. A mistake, though she wrote the word and then crossed it out and wrote above it, no, not a mistake. A choice I made alone because I was terrified. She was 19 and she was alone, and the boy who had gotten her pregnant had already left school and she didn't know how to tell her parents, and she made the decision to give the baby up for adoption. She had never told anyone, not a sister, not her mother who had been alive until Eleanor was 40 and who she had been close to, not me. She wrote, I'm not asking you to forgive me, Philip. I'm asking you to understand that I carried this for 45 years and I didn't know how to put it down. Every time I tried to tell you, I thought about what it would change. And I was afraid of what it would change. And I was afraid of what it would change. The son's name was Douglas. He had been adopted by a family in western Pennsylvania. Eleanor had found him through a DNA registry 6 years ago. 6 years. While I was sitting across from her at the dinner table every evening, and she was carrying this, and they had been in contact, letters mostly, a few phone calls. She had never met him in person because she was afraid. She wrote that word too, afraid. She was afraid of what it would do to our family, to our daughter, to me. But in the last 2 months, once she knew she was running out of time, she had finally met him, twice. Once at a coffee shop in Columbus, and once here, in this storage unit, which she had rented specifically because she needed somewhere private, somewhere that wasn't our home. The bins along the wall, she explained, contained everything she had saved, letters from Douglas, photographs he had sent her, him as a child, as a teenager, at his college graduation, his wedding photo, a drawing his daughter had made and mailed to a P.O. Box Eleanor had been keeping secret for 6 years. She had a granddaughter she had never been able to tell us about. She had kept all of it here, in Unit 31, because she didn't know what else to do with it, and she couldn't throw it away. The smaller envelope with our daughter's name on it contained a letter for her. Eleanor asked me in my letter to decide when the right time was to give it to her. She said she trusted my judgment. She said she always had. The USB drive contained contact information for Douglas, his email address, his phone number, his home address in Pittsburgh. And at the end of the letter, on the last page, she wrote, I don't know what you will feel when you read this. I've imagined it so many times. I've imagined you angry, and I've imagined you heartbroken, and I've imagined you walking away from that unit and never looking back, and I would understand all of it, every bit of it. But I want you to know that keeping this from you was the thing I am most ashamed of in my life, not the choice I made at 19. I was a child and I was alone and I did what I thought I had to do. I'm ashamed that I didn't trust you with the truth. I'm ashamed that I was more afraid of losing your good opinion of me than I was of carrying this alone. You deserved better. You always did. But I need you to know something else. Meeting Douglas did not take anything from you. He does not replace anything or diminish anything. He is simply a person who exists because of me, who grew up without me, who deserved to know where he came from. That is all. The nurse's name is Anita. I told her not to give you the paper until after. I didn't want you distracted when you were with me at the end. I wanted your full attention. I was selfish about that part. I love you. I have loved you for 31 years, and I will love you for whatever comes after that. I'm sorry I was afraid. I'm sorry it took me this long. Please be kind to Douglas. He is a good person. He sounds just like his grandfather, which I think you would find funny if you knew my father like I did. And Philip, please go home. After you read this, go home. Make yourself a cup of tea. Feed the cat. You always forget to feed the cat when you're sad. I sat in that storage unit for 2 hours. I read the letter 4 more times. I went through one of the plastic bins, slowly, carefully, like each item was something that might break. There was a photograph of Douglas at maybe 8 years old, gap-toothed and grinning, holding a fish he caught. There was a paper he'd written in high school about the American Revolution that Eleanor had somehow obtained and kept in a plastic sleeve. There was a card he had sent her that said simply, "Thank you for finding me. I always wondered." I didn't feel what I expected to feel. I had expected anger, and it was there, somewhere, a small hard knot of it, because 31 years, and she had kept this, and that is a long time to carry a secret, and an equally long time to be kept outside of one. I won't pretend I didn't feel that, but mostly I felt something else, something harder to name. I thought about Eleanor at 19 years old. I never knew her then. By the time I met her, she was 27, already working at the insurance company downtown, already the person she had decided to become. She was composed and funny, and a little guarded, and had spent the first 6 months of our relationship trying to make her laugh, because when she finally let herself laugh, it was the best sound I had ever heard. She had been 19 and alone, and she had made a decision, and then she had spent 45 years carrying it and being afraid. I thought about all the times she must have wanted to tell me, all the times she had probably started to and stopped, all the evenings I was right there across the table, and she was holding this and couldn't find the door. I'm not going to tell you it didn't hurt. It did. It does. But I have been married for 31 years to a woman I loved, and I know the difference between a betrayal and a wound. She was wounded. She kept the wound to herself because she was afraid, and that was wrong of her, and she knew it. She said so, in her own words, on the last page of that letter. She didn't excuse it. She just explained it. That's all any of us can do, I think, at the end. Just explain it as honestly as we can. I called our daughter that night. I didn't tell her everything. Not yet. She was grieving and exhausted, and I decided, as Eleanor had asked me to decide, that the letter would keep for a little while. A week, maybe 2, until she'd had some time. What I told her was that I had found some things of her mother's that I wanted to share with her when the time was right. She didn't ask questions. She trusted me. She sounds like her mother that way. I fed the cat. I made a cup of tea, chamomile, which was Eleanor's kind, not mine, because it was what was on the shelf and I didn't have the energy to look for anything else. I sat in the kitchen for a long time with the cat on my lap and the tea going cold, and I talked to Eleanor out loud, which I have never done before in my life, and which I will probably keep doing for the rest of it. I told her I wasn't angry. I told her I was sad and that there was a difference. I told her I would find Douglas, and I would be kind to him because she asked me to, and be kind to him because she was right that she couldn't change it now. I told her I was going to give our daughter the letter when the time was right, and I was going to sit next to her when she read it. and I was going to let her feel whatever she felt. I told her I wished she'd trusted me sooner. I told her I wished I had somehow made myself the kind of person she felt she could tell. Then I told her that I forgave her, that I had loved her for 31 years and I wasn't going to let one secret, even a secret this size, undo what we had built together, because what we built together was real. I was there for it. I know what it was. I emailed Douglas 3 weeks after the funeral. I spent a long time on that email. I wrote it and deleted it and wrote it again more times than I can count. I didn't know what to call him. I didn't know what we were to each other. I still don't exactly. Eleanor's letter said he was a good person. I decided to trust that. I told him I was Eleanor's husband. I told him she had left me his contact information and asked me to reach out. I told him I was sorry for his loss because it was a loss. She was his mother, whatever complicated shape that relationship had taken, and she was gone. And he had known her for 6 years, and then she was gone. I told him I would understand if he didn't want to hear from me. He wrote back within 2 hours. He said he had been waiting and hoping I would contact him. He said Eleanor had talked about me. He said Eleanor had read this line probably 40 times. She told me you were the steadiest person she had ever known. She said the best decision she ever made was trusting you. I had to put the phone down for a while after that. We have spoken on the phone 3 times now. He's 55 years old, which I'm still getting used to. I have a stepson, if that's even the right word, who is 55 years old. He's a civil engineer. He has a wife and 2 kids. His daughter, the one who sent the drawing, is 9 years old. He says she knows about Eleanor now, that they explained it to her simply. There was a grandmother she never got to meet, but who loved her. His daughter's name is Clara. I don't know what I am to Clara. I don't know what Douglas and I will become to each other, whether we will stay in touch, or fade, or find our way to something neither of us has words for yet. I don't know how our daughter will feel when she reads her mother's letter, or what she will want after that. What I know is that Eleanor sat in a cold storage unit on some ordinary afternoon and put her whole hidden life into labeled bins and sealed envelopes, and she trusted me to find it. She trusted me to know what to do with it. She set the combination to her own birthday, so I'd be able to get through the door. That is a kind of love. A complicated, imperfect, frightened kind of love. But love. I've been thinking lately about all the things we keep from the people we love most. Not out of malice. Out of fear. Out of not knowing how to begin. Out of believing that a truth told late is a truth that does more damage than silence. Eleanor was wrong about that. I think she knew it at the end. I think that's why she wrote the letter. But I also think she was 19 years old and alone and terrified, and she made a decision, and then she spent the rest of her life trying to figure out how to live with it. And she did live with it. She built a real life and loved real people and was, by any measure I know of, a good woman. I'm not going to let the secret be bigger than the woman. Before you go, if there is something you've been carrying, something you've kept because you were afraid of what it would change, I just want to say this. The people who love you are probably steadier than you think. They might surprise you. Give them the chance. And if you're the one who gets the letter, who finds the storage unit, who sits in the cold reading words you never expected, be patient with the person who left it for you. They were afraid. Most of us are, more than we let on. That's what Eleanor taught me. 31 years together, and she was still teaching me things. I'll see you in the next one. I keep thinking about the combination lock. Eleanor said it to her own birthday. Not mine, hers. Because she knew that on the worst night of my life, in the cold and the dark, I would still remember the day she was born. She thought that through. She sat somewhere, at some ordinary kitchen table on some ordinary afternoon, and she thought, he'll try my birthday first. And she was right. I didn't even hesitate. That is what I mean when I say she was a good woman. Not perfect, but good in the ways that are harder to fake, the ways that show up in small practical decisions made when nobody is watching. I've been trying to work out what this whole thing has taught me, and I keep coming back to 3 things that I don't have fancy words for, just honest ones. The first is doing right even when it costs you. Eleanor made a terrible, lonely choice at 19, and she spent 45 years paying for it in silence. But when she finally had the chance to make it right, when she found Douglas, when she was running out of time, she didn't look away. She met him, twice, in a storage unit, because that was the only space she had that was entirely hers. She wrote him letters. She saved his daughter's drawing. She did the right thing quietly, without asking anyone's permission, without knowing if it would be enough. That kind of integrity doesn't announce itself. It just shows up eventually in labeled bins and sealed envelopes. The second is thinking clearly when everything inside you wants to fall apart. When I sat in that unit and read her letter, the easiest thing in the world would have been to close it and walk away. To decide I didn't want to know more. I'm 63 years old, and I've earned the right to protect myself from hard things. But I read it 4 more times instead. I went through the bins. I looked at the photograph of Douglas at 8 years old holding that fish. I made myself understand the shape of what Eleanor had carried, because understanding it was the only way I could do anything useful with it. Clarity is not a gift. It's a decision you make on purpose, usually when you least feel like it. The third is simply staying. Eleanor stayed in her marriage even while carrying something that could have ended it. Douglas stayed open to a mother who came to him late and afraid. I stayed at that folding chair for 2 hours when every part of me wanted to leave, and I emailed Douglas even after I'd written and deleted the message a dozen times. Staying showing up again after you've had every reason not to is not a passive thing. It is probably the hardest thing there is. What Eleanor left in Unit 31 wasn't just a secret, it was an instruction. She was showing me, in the only way she knew how, after 45 years of silence, how to carry something with honesty, how to lay it down carefully so that the people you love can find it and decide what to do with it. I am not the same person I was before that Tuesday in November. I'm not sure I'm worse for it. I think Eleanor, in her complicated and frightened and ultimately courageous way, gave me one last thing to grow into. I intend to try